Hey everyone, welcome to Thursday night. We're doing this complete CKE blueprint reading system for Thursday night, which is something that I've been doing for some time. I'm now opening it up to everyone that has the ability to be here. But I wanted to talk about elevations tonight. I wasn't sure if who would join and who would not. At the moment, I think we're just on our own, so which is not a big deal. Actually works out really well, so I can just walk my way through a lot of the discussion and talk our way through elevations for tonight. Now, it's interesting because elevations, everyone's like, yeah, it's just north, south, east, and west. As much as I agree with you, there's a lot that comes along with that, which is what your elevations entail. There's also interior elevations. So you have your exterior, which is obviously the outside of the building or structure, and then there's the interior. Now, each room, like take your bathroom. If you were to stand in the middle of your bathroom and look to the elevations, let's say this wall, which may be the tub or the shower, a back wall, if you turn to your left, maybe a wall with nothing on it, maybe a towel holder, and then you would turn one more. Potentially, it would be the door. That would be exit to that bathroom. And then if you turned around again, 190 degree, then you'd be looking at a mirror, a vanity sink, maybe even a commode on that wall. So those types of things are elevations as well. And what we do is, or what a designer, AOR, architect of record, does, is they draft out those four walls and lay them all open. So you have the ability to look at each of those things and walk through it. So when we do something like an interior elevation, well, let's talk about exterior. So the exterior elevations are here. And I'll talk my way, discuss on this elevation and make our way around. As you start to look at each of the sides of the elevation, you can also see there are other items that are being added to this. So on a set of plans, you would see something like a section, which is right here. That would be a section line, which would basically cut through the building, and there would be a section there that would open up, and you'd be able to look inside the building as though you were slicing a pie. Talked about that in a few different segments of this class, but in this case, that's where we're at. If you turn 90 degrees, and now you're looking at the side of the building, now you've got another elevation. I'm going to expand on that just so I can see where we're at. That's the east elevation. So this elevation is east, and then we make our way to the west elevation. You can see here. And then there's a whole different set of features when you look at the other elevation. And then if I was to make my way around back to the beginning, sorry, I'm grabbing the wrong screen. I'm sharing my screen over here, so you see it here. So I'm trying to move around on it. And then there's key features in each of those. You would then get details on doors, windows, roof slopes, which would be something like if you were looking at the roof slope here, you'll get an idea if it's a 12, I can't read that, 1210? I think that's what it says. That's a real steep roof. So you wouldn't know that prior to building it unless you looked at a set of plans and you went, oh, you know what? We need, if you were a builder, you'd say 1210, that's a pretty harsh pitch. We're going to need to make sure we have X, Y, and Z for that when we're doing the installation. So the builder understands that, as does the client, looks at it and says, wow, that's a pretty heavy pitch. Certain areas are heavier, more for snow because you want that dead load off of your roof. And if you were to be more south, your pitches are not as sharp. They're eased a bit because there's no need to run off the same way. So all of those things are taken into account when you're working your way through a set of plans. I won't call it out. There are some people in the chat. I don't know if there's any questions. I did have someone who was on another chat on another night. And as soon as I called their name, they bailed. So I get it. I'm not going to do that unless the person who is in the chat wants to talk or brings up a question or doesn't even want to talk about this and wants to talk about something completely different from the CKE class. There's so much we could go over, but perfect example, as I talked about before. This is the bathroom. So if we were to look at the elevations for this bathroom, this is how you would get there. You would start by MA4 dot, I think it's 5X, and you'll see it has a 5 on the left, a 2 at the top, a 4, and a 3. So these items right here are basically saying, hey, this elevation facing this way is going to be 2. So everything on this wall is 2. Everything on this wall is 5. This wall is 3, and this is 4. So we're going to go back and forth, and I'll show you what I mean. So if we look at 5, which is what I have circled, you can see the 5 is right here, bathroom interior elevation. So now we're going to go back up. I'm standing in the middle of this room, and I'm looking towards 5. So what am I going to see on my right-hand side? My right hand would be where the sink is. My left hand would be where the commode or toilet is, right? So now we look at the plan, and sure enough, my right hand is looking at the sink, and my left hand is towards the toilet. And that's the elevation you're going to see. It shows you the everything below. So you're looking at a flat area, and it allows you to look at that area from, let's call it, one dimension or two dimensions. You have height and you have width. So you're able to look at the height of this elevation and the width of this elevation. And that allows someone who's either designing, purchasing, building, the ability to look at the detail that goes along with that. And that is the beauty of this type of work. When you have that, oops, didn't mean to do that. I tried to grab it. See if I can get out of there. Let's come back up here. There we go. So that is how it works. It also shows height. So you look at the ceiling here. You have a 9'4". You have a 9'4" height. To your window, the top out of window would be at 8'6". Top of door, 6'8", standard. That's a 6'8" door, which you would see. And then you have your pocket door. So each of these shows those elevations and breaks them down. Obviously points to a mirror. We all can tell that. Points to a sink. Now it calls out wheelchair accessible, which is like vanity. I'm going to pull that out of there because it's blinking. And then vanity side drawers. So you can picture this, how the knee space, it's open. So it's showing you that you have the ability with a wheelchair to roll up into this space. You have the drawers on each side. And this obviously, as it says here, wheelchair accessible. It's an ADA compliant. So you could build this first floor and have that ADA compliant and meet it. So usually you wouldn't find this in a person's standard home, but you would find this in a rental unit, a condo, something to that effect where it needed to meet that ADA standard. If we roll back up and we take a look, you can see this grab bar right here. There's a grab bar that's showing above the commode. Now there's a height that stands for that. And in this case, it's showing 3 feet. And the 3 feet is dead center to that. Looks like it is. Yeah, actually it looks like it's at your chair rail. But we'll talk, usually your handrail is 32 to 34, but I would have to verify that. If I look over here, you can see that the top of the sink is at 2'10". Rarely are we at 2'10" anymore, but it's for ADA. It's usually at 36 inches, and that would work for that one. Now, let's take a look at where we're at here. This is elevation 4. So let's go back up, take a look at here, and now we're looking at elevation 4. So now we're looking to the right. Now, if I'm standing there and I am staring dead, let's say that tip of that point of that where that 4 is my nose, I am looking at the bathtub, right? And on the left-hand side is the linen cabinet, and the right-hand side, or pretty much dead straight in front of me, is the bathtub. So we're going to now go down and look at 2 dimensions of that same thing. And that's what you get. You can see the tub is on the right or straight in front of me. And on the left-hand side, see, that looks awkward to me. The linen cabinet looks tight and small, but when you look at it on the elevation, it makes a lot of sense. It's a very tight built-in millwork. And that millwork opens one direction. Now, which way does it open? So this is a great way to understand. If you look at the cabinet itself, the hinge is on the left and the door opens from the right-hand side. And why do you think that is? Because when you're inside the bathroom, you want it to open so you can have access to it, not from the door side. So let's take a look down. We head down, and you can see, I don't know if anyone who watches this, the corner or the point of this is where, in essence, the opening side or the hinge side, I should say, and that triangle that's being built is basically saying this top to this bottom says we open on that side and we stay tight to the wall or the millwork on this side. So the door opens and you can actually see the handle right there. So it opens, swings that way. Same with the bottom one. Now, you couldn't have told this or noticed this from this visual, right? All you would see is it looks like one door. So this is why learning elevations, understanding how elevations work really makes a big difference to you. You're able to then take it, scroll down, and then go, oh, holy crap, there's 1, 2, 3 doors on this. So there's more to this than you would have known. Bathtub, same idea. You have your bathtub there, your step over, your spout, your shower head, and your tile. So E54 or E64, E64? Yeah, E64. Would be I don't have it here, and this is what I should do is for the next time we do this class or next Thursday, what I'll do is I'm going to pull up a full set of plans and we can reference from here and then go to the finishes. And those finishes will allow you to then see the finished schedule is what we would call it. And it's line by line item, and it would say E64, or F64, F62. You can see the F62 here. It's talking about the floor, what finishes those floors have. So these are all specific things that these plans talk to you, and they basically tell you everything that goes on. Any questions? I can open up the chat, see if anyone wants to ask any questions. All good. So if we go from there, sounds good. If we go from there and we'll head to elevation 2. Now, you're like, what the hell is that? It's what they did was, it's cool when you start to really grasp the whole understanding of what it means. So if we were to take elevation 2, let's say we're putting our nose right to that point and we're looking straight this way. What do we have in front of us? We have a 32-inch door, right? On the left-hand side is our vanity, and our right-hand side it's a little bit awkward the way it's going to show it in the plan. It's like someone just cut it with a knife, and you're looking at the bathtub, and I don't know if it's showing the linen cabinet. I don't remember what I just saw. What happens as you get older. So if I look at it, is this 2? This is 3. I went to 2. All right, so I'm going to roll to 2, and then we'll come back. So, all right, so what they're doing is you're not seeing the cabinet right behind the tub. You're seeing exactly in line with, let me show you, this line right here. It's not a line. It doesn't show. I wish I had it on my Foxit right now or my Bluebeam. That's the downside to sharing on this platform. I don't have the same abilities as I would if I was, like, you can see that, my cursor. But on Bluebeam, I could scroll this across. I think that's what I have to do on the next class. It'll make it a lot easier. I can call out a few things, and my cursor is a bit bigger. Anyway, so from this, I'm going to run my cursor across. This is the line that we're cutting the bathroom, and we're going to look towards the 2, right? So let's roll this up. There you go. See what I'm saying is you're not seeing the back wall where the door is. You're seeing whatever is at that plane that way. So you're looking at a tub that's cut in half, and you're looking at the spout and the 2 hot and cold, the shower head, the curtain rod, the transom or window above. And this is an older style home. You can tell just the way it's been designed with the transom over. It allows air to exchange from the bathroom into the hallway. That was an old school thing. And let's go through that. Look at the arrow. The dotted arrow, or the dashed line, I should say, shows that what? The hinge is at the top, and the door swings open or out. Now, it doesn't show which way it swings, but we'll assume it swings one way or the other. Then if we look over at the vanity, you have KX25. Again, that's going to be on the finished schedule or millwork schedule. And it'll say X25, and you'll say, what the heck is X25? And that's that cabinet, right? Just as the finish is F52 for the top of that vanity. That's calling out that finish and saying, hey, this is the finish we're using. It's going to be either marble, or it'll be a terracotta, or a granite, or who knows? There's a million different things. Mica, whatever that design has been, and you can then exchange those for different things. Now, again, same idea. This has the ability to now show you the heights as well. So the builder, the architect, someone such as ourselves who are looking at this and going, oh, let's view what's going on here. That transom, top of transom, is at 8'6", top of door, 6'8". And then your finished floor, they start with a 0, top of finished floor. So they'll always work off that. I shouldn't say always. There are times when they'll say FFE, finished floor elevation, and they'll call it something different like 4 feet because they're referencing the floor or the exterior floor. So you always have to verify where your FFE is, or finished floor elevation, or when you see that mark right there, that survey mark, which is black, black, and white, white, crossing each other, that should let you know of your elevations. Also show the crown molding in here, and then they talk about the finished materials, gypsum board, shower head with a curtain rod. We already talked about that, but you can tell this is tile. So F64 is, again, on your finished schedule will be, well, what that finished schedule is. I'm going to scroll up and do 3 just because we passed it and I rolled right by it, and that would make it easy for you to understand. We're going to turn it one more time. So if we go to 3, and 3 is looking, well, out the window. So 3, if your nose was here and you were looking, I was standing on that A4.5 and my nose was facing to the 3. Remember, 5 and 4 is basically if I put my hands out and I said, all right, this is what I'm going to look at going forward, that's what we'd be looking at. So we're going to head over to 3. And that's what we're going to see. There's the window, dead ahead. If I look to my left is the shower, and I look to my right is the commode, toilet. And again, it gives me that understanding of what's happening. They have a wainscot below. Wainscot, you'll hear a lot of people saying, call it a wainscoting. It's not, I don't want to say it's not correct, but it is, if you want to say proper pronunciation, it's wainscoting or wainscot, a wainscot. Or you'll hear some people say wainscot. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. I know what you're talking about. When we talk about it, you'll say a wainscoting, and I'll be like, yep, I got it. But if you want to know, that's how you pronounce it or see it. You could look it up. It means really nothing in the long scheme, in the grand scheme of things. So the commode is there. Then your ADA grab bar. We're back to F76, which would be our finish. So you can tell F76 is probably a border or not a millwork of some sort that basically calls out and says, hey, we're going to call it this. And you can see where it shows the ADA grab bar that goes through it. So they wanted to make sure visually that that grab bar went through that trim. So it gave it a nice look. Base molding, F68. Floor, F62. We're back to that same thing. Then the commode or toilet is an X20, and it'll call that out. It'll say, this is what it is. This is the type, like a Kohler or some other manufacturer, and it'll specify what you're going to use. Hope that makes sense. Tile, F64, we're back to that same thing. X27 is the tub. F72 looks like what we're doing is we've picture framed the window, which is common, and you would have a wood type of finish. Maybe it's a cedar, maybe it's a heavy white wood that's painted. I don't know, but there's a million different ways to skin that one. So that is how you would look at the interior. So it helps out a great deal. We could go from every different type of interior. I'm just going to scroll back up. That was interior. We didn't break down the break room, but or it really is the bathroom. No, this is the break room. This came from another, right? This is from the other site. So I'm going to close this one out. Any questions? There's some people that are not showing up here that I know are on the call, but if you have a question or comment, you're good. It will come through if you ask, or you could type it, or not. No worries. I'm going to go, let's see, where do you want to go? Is there anything you want to talk about? Because this is my side where I can see everything that's going on. Like, did we want to talk about structural key elements? I could talk about HVAC. Let's see, got HVAC. We could talk about electrical. I'll do HVAC just because we're here. So these are part of the MEPs. MEP, when you'll hear a lot of people just drag out the word MEPs, it's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. That's the standard for those subcontractors or trades, as we like to say, who are your basic, who make up the project, right? There are quite a few different trades, but those are our main three: mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Mechanical deals with the HVAC, electrical deals with, well, electrical, and plumbing is our plumbing. So if we were to do types of HVAC unit in construction, you'd see that here. There's a few, someone's passing by. Split system, which would be like a mini split or a split in your home or in a condo or an apartment. That's what you would see over here. This is your exterior unit. Mini splits, if you haven't seen them before, they're doing a lot more of that. And then cassettes. We just installed this in a very large office where each of these that you would see above is in each of the rooms, and then the rest of the system is outside. So it's like a mini split, but each of those runs off a big manifold and it feeds into that whole air system. Works pretty well. Problem is it's newer technology. I wouldn't say newer, but it's newer than most of these other technologies. They're trying it out. It's worked fairly well. The problem is making sure that your connections are all done properly. There's a lot of connections. It's unlike a mini split, which goes from here to here with two lines, a power line and a low voltage line, which would be for your thermostat. Those are it. From here, there's connections from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. So it continuously has a lot of running lines to keep it running. Sounds redundant, but yeah. If I was to come up to the symbols, now there's a ton of symbols, but I could go through all these and it would seem pretty boring to do that because you could review it yourself in the class or in the course. But we basically talk about all the different types of diffusers. Diffusers, whether they're return or supply. One of the biggest things that I've noticed that a lot, even people in the trade don't recognize it. And then they learn it and they're like, oh, I never realized it, is that there's a call out for a return as opposed to a diffuser. Sorry, a return as opposed to air supply. So if I was to come up here and look at this, you see when they have an X through it, that's an air supply. That means air is being given to the room. And when there's one line through it, that's your return. Now in this course, you can see how I started to ask that question. If you look at this trunk, right, that goes down here, this trunk, supply, and you can see it gets smaller as it gets to the end. So imagine your unit wherever it is and wherever you live. If you have a wall unit, never mind. If you have a split system where there's a unit that runs inside the apartment or the house or wherever you are, and then there's a unit that sits either on the roof or sits outside, that's your condensing unit. The one inside the house is your air handler. I'm getting ahead of myself, but what I was trying to make the point is these trunks would feed like each of the bedrooms, the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, and so on and so forth. And they would feed off the main unit coming off of here, and they would feed that way. The return you can see would come off of here, which is pretty hidden, so you can't. Oh, I see what it did. This is your return. The cross here, this is your supply. The return is now sucking air and bringing it back to the unit. So you have this side, which is returning air. You have this side, which is coming off the main trunk for the feed. Again, this would be, oh, that's funny because you can't tell the way it's coming off of here. These are returns. See how they have one line through them? And these are two lines. It looks like a feed, and that's a trick question right there if you get to that point. These are returns. These are supplies, but they don't show you the differential between this crossover. Again, we come over here, supply, return, because you can see this one runs up, and over to this unit. This one should not be, but the X tells you what it is. So as long as the architect did it correctly, you're good. With that comes questions about what they are. And you'll see as I scroll up like this, square supply diffuser supply, right? So you're looking for the X, 250 CFMs, and we're going to look for that. And if I was going to find it, I believe, see, I can't read that. Oh, 250 CFMs. That's it. H would probably be right there. And then flexible ductwork. If you were to look here, that would be C. That's the flexible ductwork. This is all hard, rigid ductwork, which could be fiberglass. It could be metal. We would call that out. But seeing it's 16 by 12 right there lets you know that it is square. If it was radius, it would have a radius circle and a line through it, like you would if you were in engineering school. Or if you learned diameter, it would have a circle, a line through it, and it'd say the radius. So you'd know, oh, all right, that's circular. And anyway, that's where all these go. So what we just did is flow tracing. You're checking where the flow goes, how it gets there, to, from, it makes its way. An airflow example, there you go. I'm going to bring the same unit up, and this was removed, which was confusing. I can see why now. Airflow out, so your X, remember, is supply, so it's giving air to the room. So that's the blue. The return air is the yellow, so you can see the one line through those diffusers or those return vents, and it's showing you the direction of that airflow. So this is your unit right here, blowing air, blows this way, and each of those trunks gets smaller to keep the CFMs or pressure at a certain amount, so it stays pressurized throughout, so it's not just falling out of the unit at the very end. It's calculated in order to make sure that it's done properly like that. Same idea here. This is flowing out. It looks like it's part of the same unit because the return is running above the supply. So it has that visual as though that's what you're seeing, but it's not. And then if we were to make our way across here, the blue comes around, supply is here, and then runs across here, and that's our return. So these are all ways of you being able to recognize. Now, if you were in mechanical or in the HVAC world, you would start to work down CFMs and understanding that entire package. That is going to be something that this course is going to deliver in some time. Right now, we're recrafting these to give them better visuals because I think they're good, but they could be better. I would love to hear from those of you who have already asked. I'll probably send out another ask. I don't know if you've received it, who's on the call, or who will be watching this tonight. This will be going out, by the way, later this evening. You'll probably receive it as an email, and I'll also be dropping it on the social media accounts. I'll be, excuse me, cutting it up and giving some of these out so people have a way of learning from them as well. Excuse me. So if I head down here and we start to talk at 11.6 airflow exercise, which is where I start to ask which way they should be going, what's the direction of them, what are they called? If you were to call out C, what is C? And then you were to look at what's supply, what's return, what's an RTU supplying cold, What's an RTU supply cold? And there's something missing from that. Oh, no, it's not. I just didn't do a supply. I did return supply, R2 supply, R2. I've got to check that out. D, this may be an error. It is an error. This is the wrong one. That's not good, but all right, I'm going to have to fix that. Glad I came across this. And then it will talk about, now that you've gone through the module, you can then try it on your own and go through these and figure it out. And then there'd be a test on this. And that's basically what it is. But I also don't like that you can't get to the bottom. Okay, so I've got to add some space to that. So that's mechanical in a nutshell. Fairly straightforward. We didn't want to go too into detail with this one, only because it can become daunting when you're going through something like this. And the main idea is for you to learn how to read a set of blueprints, not how to become a mechanical engineer or how to learn how to design mechanics. It's more to get an understanding of what you're looking at on a set of plans, right? So that was the reason for that. Then there's a practice test that comes up, and then we move on to reading and interpreting M&EP drawings and electrical plans. So we could go through that for a minute. We're at 7:31. I didn't plan on talking the entire time. If there were any questions, I may get a question on my phone, but I'm not going to pull that up right now. Common electrical symbols. This is fairly standard. If you were to go through these, the connection is that this is a standard outlet that you would see on your wall. That's exactly what that would be. Then there's a single, which it would be just one outlet by itself. It's usually circular. It has a plug for it. Sometimes it's the amps are higher, and you'll see that for an air conditioner or maybe in a bathroom where it's one plug, and it's done that way because they don't want you to overkill with people putting in a bunch of hair dryer, curling iron. You get what I'm saying, and it could blow the circuit, so they limit it. Then they'll toss special purpose receptacles. Then they're double duplex, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 2 and 2, and they're in a quad box, and that's what it would look like. And there would be 4, in essence, 4 outlets in there. You could go down this thing. GFI would be GF, and that would be ground fault circuit interrupter, which would flick off if it senses any water. I could go through that whole thing, but I don't want to go through how they work. But it recognizes that there's a ground, and it flips the switch, or being grounded. We could go through all these. Floor box, fire rated poke through. Poke throughs were what come through the floor. I never loved the name, but what they do is, and many times we do this in commercial projects where we're on the second floor and we're going to core through that floor, and that's what it'll show. It'll show that core box, a fire rated core box, because you don't want fire. Let's say there's a fire on the first floor coming through that floor box and igniting what's on the second floor. So you would use that type of floor box, fire rated. It gives you a rating of 1 hour, half hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be. And you understand that. Pull box, disconnect. Pull box is if you're transferring from one area to another and you need to pull that wire, and then you're going to pull it from there, and then you're going to keep on going. A disconnect, motor starter. This goes on and on and on. This is all part of the mechanical understanding. I look at that as mechanical, but it is electrical because most of these things work on electrical. But power pole, all of these. Lighting symbols. Now, if you've ever seen these, this lighting symbol is, I had an APM actually ask me the other day what this meant, and I had to explain that it's not just a light that you have on your ceiling, it is also an emergency circuit light, which means that if all the power goes out, it senses it goes out, and it will turn on. It's usually battery operated, and it has its own battery cell that's connected to it. It senses the power that goes to it is off, and it will turn on. And that happens a lot of times in schools. Updated schools have that. Updated condominiums have that. Homes don't usually have that. Developments have that. That's just the sort of thing. Switches. You ever in your apartment or your house have a three-way switch? Now, a three-way switch does not mean it switches at 3 locations. It means it switches at 2 locations. So a three-way switch means if you're at one end of the hallway and you have a switch and it controls the lights above you, and then there's another end of the hallway where there's a switch, and it also connects that same light. That's a three-way switch. And that switch turns it on and off depending on where you're standing. It'll do the same thing. You can flick it on there, flick it on there. It'll do the same thing. What resources do you recommend when going from APM to PM? I may be put into a position where I'm transitioning and want to be prepared. All right, so that's a great question, and I'll tell you why, because I have 3 APMs I'm working with right now, and one of the biggest criteria is scheduling. We were actually talking about it today. One of them came in, and she and I were talking about what was the biggest, and it's funny that you brought that up, but that's exactly what we found to be when as a senior PM, and I have another senior PM in the office with me, and I have a PM in the office, and we all talk about what we would want to see our APMs advance and move up. And it is absolutely understanding plans, understanding how structures go together, meaning in order to build a schedule, you have to understand the process, right? And in order to understand the process, you have to understand duration, meaning how long does it take? I teased on this one on social media, on TT and on Instagram, and saying, hey, who wants to hear more about scheduling? And I think I'm going to have to do it now because I got an overwhelming amount of DMs saying yes, yes, and yes, I definitely want. Please don't hesitate to do that. We want to do that. So scheduling is, I had a seasoned person, I won't go into their detail, and they were asked to build a schedule, and they had no understanding of how to build a schedule. And it was not a good scene for them because they're looking to us and we're like, well, that's why we're offering this. We're telling you you're going to be in this position, but you need to be able to build that schedule on your own. So that is one of the biggest. So when I say understanding the process, let's say you were doing a bathroom. Let's just use something small, easy. And you have to start from soup to nuts, right? Let's say you've demoed the bathroom and now you're going to be building that bathroom from the ground up, or at least studs in. So you've got your stud wall and you've got your vapor barriers, you have your drywall, you have your floor. You then have, back it up. You have your studs, you have your rough-ins, right? You have your rough-in plumbing, you have your rough-in electrical. Depending on what type of or level home you're building, or residence, or commercial, they could have low voltage, meaning they could have fire, they could have sound, which is music, they could have so many different things that could be added. They could have puck lights or lights that are in the ceiling. So then you've got that electric that's got to be roughed in. So rough-in, you have a rough-in electrical, rough-in plumbing. We usually like to do plumbing first. Why? Because plumbing has a pitch to its drain, so it needs to have its direction first. It also is, when you're setting up plumbing, you have plumbing in the shower that has to be centered. You don't want something, that electrical goes by, which usually wouldn't happen. But let's say your lighting, let's say over the sink, you usually have those things. Or, and many times, it depends on who's in the building or who's in the structure first. We would usually like to, have either one in there, but I'll take plumbing just because they make a bigger mess. Well, depends on who you ask. Plumbing goes in, lays all their copper, gets it all done. Electrician comes in behind them, does their electric. So you'd say, hey, plumber, now if I was to build the schedule, I would say to the plumber, I already know the plumber's going to take maybe 2-3 days at most. He wants to get in and out of there, depending on the size of the shower. But let's call it like the shower we were looking at just previously on the plans. They're going to want to get in and out of there in 2 days, a day, if they can. And they'll sweat everything down. They'll say they're PVC, or if it's a a different type of pipe, they may be even faster, like a day. But I will ask the plumber at the same time. I'll build a schedule and put 2 days in there, and then I'll call the plumber and say, hey, how fast do you think you can get in and out of this shower or this bathroom? And he'll say, give me 2 days. I should be fine. I'll put 2 days in there. Then I call the electrician. I'll put his in for 2 days. I'll call him and say, hey, what do you think? He usually say, yeah, a day or two. So let me just do that. So now you've got a schedule of 2 days, 2 days for this, 2 days for that. Now you've got your rough-in. So now you go rough-in drywall, or depending on your building a shower, you've got your board that you're going to use depending on what type of board. So there's so many steps that go along with it. I'll call that installer and I'll say, hey, how many days? So now you've got a cascading run of rough-in electric or plumbing, rough-in plumbing, rough-in electric, rough-in walls, and now we're going for finish, and then we do tile, and I'll ask the tile guy, and the tile guy will say sometimes 6, 7, 8 days. You're like, why? Because I have to do the level of the shower, I have to build it up there. There's so many steps to it. So my point is, if you don't know how to build that room, it's not going to be easy for you to then create a schedule of that room. I hope that makes sense. So understanding those steps is not rocket science, but it's learning. And you can look at references in other schedules to draw from those in order to build those. So I hope that makes sense. So scheduling, huge. Probably one of the bigger ones, which I probably should have a class on that within this setting. So we have the ability for you to reference videos. And then a reading set of plans is key. And then I think if you're already at the APM schedule, you probably already use Excel, and you're probably already using Excel spreadsheets. You're learning how to use Procore or whatever that company uses to store all of their information, whether it's SharePoint or a Procore or a Builder with an R at the end, however that's said. There's so many different companies out there that are trying to make a better wheel, but they all seem to do the same thing. But scheduling is, you need to know what you're doing. You could do a cascade or use a model, which is basically they'll give you all these cascading breakdown or tasks of each item, but you're still going to have to then do days. You're going to have to understand who comes before what. You're then going to have to make sure it works, and you have a start day, finish day, and squeeze it and compress it if you have to. So there's all those different things you'll learn. That makes sense? And if not, why? And if so, good. Sure. That is pretty much it. I think we're right up on the 7 o'clock. Yep. We're about to hit an 8 o'clock. So we've been here for about an hour. If you've got anything you want to talk about at a later date, by all means, email me. I'm going to send out an email as the weekends, or probably early next week, and discuss what our next thing coming up is. I want these to be valuable for you, and those who will be watching it. It makes that much of a difference to be able to get through it and be able to give you that information so you have the ability to take it to work if that's what you're in, or your job, and become better than those that are already there, so you have the ability to shine. And that's the main thing of having a career in this world or in this field, is having that ability to be, if not good, great. I'd rather you be great, but good is a good place to start. I want you to just feel so confident in what you're doing. So to me, that's why I do this. I absolutely want you to succeed. Anyway, thanks for joining. Have a great night. If you have any questions, hit me up, and hopefully we'll see you next week.